This is episode 5 of Incoming Aggression. And before we get into the show properly, I'm Thorin, the host of the show. Someone who now ranks TSM in the top 10 in the world. This is a new dawn, a new era for us in this world. MSI can't come soon enough. And my co-host here on the show is Froskurinn. And I feel like an expert demigoddess on all things Chinese League of Legends. I feel like after you watched that tournament and saw WE beat CJ, you saw WE best GE Tigers in a best of 3, you probably needed like a cigarette, like to go outside for some fresh air, clear your head. You probably just like, it started raining outside, you fell to your knees, the rain hit you and cleansed you and healed you spiritually inside, and you realized that there was good in the universe, that we're not just trapped alone in a black iron prison, that the human spirit can endure. And like I said, the spirit can actually, in a Gnostic sense, overcome the powers of the world, the dark archons that hold us down, the Koreans. Spirit can overcome them, Froskurinn. Did you have this sort of experience?
A religious experience. I was working actually during a majority of the games. I had to watch mostly the VODs, and so I was checking. I was like, oh, what? World Elite beat CJ? Oh, it's a best of 1. Okay, that's fine. I just like brushed it off. Best of 1, shit happens. And then when I heard about the best of 3 with GE Tigers, I was like, what? But yeah. Got to watch those VODs. Those were good.
Before you watched them, what could you even have conceived of? Like, how could it happen?
The only thing that came to me was like, they must be trolling. Either that or they're just choking on like a huge stage. But I watched the Cloud9 game that GE did live, and I was like, that's okay. That's the terrifying team that everyone's talking about, the dominating performance. So that was kind of the two weighting factors. Being
realistic, going forwards from this point, does the WE that played at IEM, does that WE show up in LPL? And if so, how often? Or do you think that was a one-off?
I'm pretty sure it was a one-off, and I take that to stylistic differences. I mean, obviously, people have beaten this horse to death over the GE World Elite series and kind of what happened there. But in LPL specifically, and just stylistically how that meta is going and how they interact with the LPL member or the World Elite member, specifically Aluka, I don't think that they're going to get away with that. Maybe it might look a little bit better for their early game, but I think their late game is still going to be as atrocious, and Aluka's still going to be the target focus.
We're going to talk about the games that they're going to play this week, because they're going to play 3 different opponents this week, and they're all good opponents in theory to some degree, right? So listen, if they are this miraculous team from IEM, if they come home and the fairy tale continues, okay, they play amazingly, they beat all these opponents, and suddenly they're sniffing a playoff spot perhaps. Is there even an outside chance in your mind that happens? That it's just the new miracle team? Like, they're going to be top 4 eventually one day?
No. I don't even think. I was talking last night about maybe their playoff chances, and I hadn't looked at their schedule closely enough, and so this morning I was examining it, and they'd have to 2-0 pretty much consistently a majority of their games to even scrape by into the playoffs, and their schedule's just front loaded. You got LGD, OMG when they come home, Starhorn Royal Club with the new Name position. I think that the dream is dead. Even if they are the miraculous team and they come back and they're stronger than before and they're able to keep up with their IEM performance, there's still no way in hell. Like, it's a shot in the dark that they're even gonna scrape into playoffs.
Plus, then you also remembered they play in LPL, where only 3 or 4 teams are even capable of actually winning a 2-0 over someone. So it was over at that point,
There's a difference, though, in when a team wants to do something versus when a team is just playing, 44 games a season and they've secured their place by 20-something points.
You say that, but actually, even if a team wants to 2-0 Gamti, they can't. Gamti's just like, we will not allow, you shall not pass. No matter what happens in game 1, Gamti's there in game 2. They're getting that shit. 10 draws in LPL.
Well, all I have to say is
all hail Gamti. They are they're the most consistent team in LPL.
They have a really good coach. I know you're going to make fun of me, but that's King's coach. When King was that amazing team that everyone hyped them up to be because of their off-season performance, that's the new Gamti coach. And you can see when he shifts over, as you would like to say, you can see his fingerprints all over it.
I would never say that. But anyway, so Team WE plays OMG, LGD, and Starhorn Royal Club. So we'll start with the first one. They're playing OMG. Now, if the way that Team WE managed to win at IEM was to get massive goal leads and then still narrowly win team fights, or against TSM just lose team fights, how the fuck are they going to beat OMG?
You're absolutely right. And what you're implying is that World Elite is a worse OMG. They have very similar playstyles, at least structurally how they're playing the game and what their win conditions are right now. So, and OMG is just like better across the board pretty much in every single position.
If you, from what you know about OMG and how they pick ban, do they just leave it so that Xie can get onto something like Ari? And if so, whatever would you do, Froskurinn? After the elation you felt after IEM, what would you do with your life if in one game Xie just dumpsters cool on an assassin?
Oh, wow. And it would be so overdue just because that's happened to Xie so many times. I do have a feeling that Xie's champion pool will not be targeted.
Well, why would you? Why would you? You know.
Leveling and Spirit, and obviously Spirit's the big hard carry and probably the one position that has the advantage over OMG, Leveling versus Spirit. They have very similar crossover champion pools and what they find a lot of success on, Rek'Sai and Jarvan. And OMG is pretty consistent about keeping Rek'Sai not just away from World Elite, but just off the table if they're not up for contention for it. So I think that the fact that their champion pools do overlap may actually help OMG. Not that they're like planning it that, hey, we're going to ban these champions and then we're going to pick these champions away and it'll be like a double whammy against Spirit, that it'll just happen by happen chance. But even if Xie does get Ahri or LeBlanc, he's still facing Cool. If he does manage to just put Cool into the ground and dumpster him, I'd be surprised.
See, what I love about Spirit's move over to LPL is that all you people who follow China, you were all thinking to yourselves, like there was a part of you was thinking like, you know, they all say Dandy and Kakao are gods, but let's see when they come to LPL, okay? And then they came over, they play for these, mostly in general, not really very good teams, just decent teams. And in general, they haven't been the dominant forces they were to the same degree in Korea. So it could make you think, oh, well, maybe it's a Korean thing, maybe it's being part of that, like their style of team, maybe it helps. So then you put Spirit onto the shittiest team, and he's still better than every Chinese jungler. There's something beautiful about that. You're getting a little taste of what it's like when a god plays the jungle position.
Yeah, but I mean, he's still fairly rare. Not disputing, Spirit is definitely a god, but you had all these other, you know, you had Looper, you had, I'm totally spacing his name right now. Dade is starting to come back a little bit, but for the majority part of LPL so far, Dade wasn't performing well.
Okay, but for junglers though, there's no jungler in China who has the kind of force and game impact that Spirit can have.
Yeah.
I mean, he can do everything. He can gank, he can counter gank, he can just carry the game, he can get his laners kills, he can do anything he wants to almost.
Spirit is the best jungler in China right now.
He's probably the best in the world, if we're being fair. I'm trying to think of who else could even be in that title.
From his teammates surrounding him and what he's been able to do, yes.
So, against OMG, that's a 2-0 for OMG. Except, jokes aside, OMG doesn't ever 2-0. Okay, but on paper at least. On paper.
On paper it should be. Again, I always bring this up that if teams are playing to their full potential or like their maximum capacity, because it's China and the only way that things make sense for an analyst point of view, especially looking at China, you just have to assume that every team's playing to their skill level, which never happens, that OMG should 2-0.
Why does it have to be 44 games in a season? Why can't it just be like... I mean, I realise the problem they have is that they've put 12 teams in the league, so you got a problem right there. And yeah, I do get that if you do a league system, it can be a bit stupid to only play once, because then what if you play EDG on week 1, meanwhile someone else is playing on week 12? You know, there's going to be a difference between those two teams you'll play. But in China itself, do they not see it as a problem that they're playing so many games?
I don't know actually how they feel about that. It's weird though because league never stops. So obviously like their league is so hectic and it's so big, but I mean, take IM for example, all the like LCS and everything, they all had, you know, weeks off. It was done. LPL's still playing. And in the off season, you have so many different tournaments. During the on season, you have so many different tournaments that everyone's participating in. So I don't know if it's just how they actually feel about it, if they just love playing the game that much.
How do they manage to schedule? You know that this is something that people in the West don't seem to understand. Okay, you know, when people have a debate in the West about the fact that there's not enough international tournaments, and they'll say, right, yeah, but the reason why there isn't enough international tournaments is because we have LCS, and so it's either LCS or international tournaments. It's like, well, in China they do an LCS that has even more games and have tons of LANs at the same time. How do they schedule it? How does it work?
I don't know how they schedule it. I know that international events, it's funny too, because people were commenting, you know, why is it EDG, or can't we get 2 different Chinese teams to go? And the honest answer was it would be a nightmare to schedule a last minute LPL team to attend IEM alongside World Elite, just because there are so many games and you have to rearrange the schedule and it can cause delays, which it has in the past. And likewise, Chinese visas are just a bitch to obtain. But as far as, I mean, I guess that speaks to the fact that they were able to pull off World Elite leaving for IEM, but it was so far in advance. Like, you have to think World Elite versus EDG qualified, you know, so long ago that they just had that much time to plan out the season. So I don't really know how they're able to manage that, but they do really well.
So then WE plays against LGD. Now, against LGD, if you're going to talk about Spirit has an advantage at the jungle position over Loveling, well, isn't fucking LGD's jungle like the worst in the whole league?
Yeah, I think there's a very valid argument to say that LGD has the weakest jungler in Schwinn.
So then tell me this, Froskurinn. Your beloved Weirless is going to go up against the new breakout phenomenon.
The god.
What will you do? What will you... Because this should be... You know, he should just put the young... Here's what you're supposed to do if you're a really good player. When that young up-and-coming player comes along, you directly crush him and you sort of put him in his place. Like, listen, you're good, but you're not like there yet. Like, there's another level to this shit. Like, you have to learn how to play against certain levels of skill, you know? You're just not in that position. If the Shiye guy goes nuts and wrecks Weirless, we'll have an interesting conversation next week. That's all I'm going to tell you. What do you think?
What I actually really like in the matchup between Shiye and Weirless is they're almost kind of like inverse of each other. Like Leveling and Spirit, where they had overlapping champion pools, Weirless and Shiye also have overlapping champion pools. They like Diana, they play Ahri, LeBlanc, the Assassins. Weirless has been really favoring Nidalee, however, though. But the thing is where Shiye is so weighted in his power in the lane phase and his ability to 1v1 duel and have these insane mechanics and be that solo queue god, Weirless is pretty lackluster in lane phase as far as the 1v1 goes. He's all about wave management, vision control, and making an impact for his team through like team fight positioning and making picks. And so I think that's actually really interesting. They have a similar champion pool, but how they use these champions to play to their own powers is completely different. Like, Weirless will use LeBlanc to split push and to create pressure points on the map with her mobility. And of course, Shiye is going to use LeBlanc to just push your face in.
So who's going to win this matchup?
I'd have to give it to LGD. Spirit does get a huge advantage there, but LGD is one of the smartest teams in LPL. They're really good at their wave management, which makes it so hard to close against them, which means that games typically go late when LGD do lose their games. It's never before 45 minutes, just because it's so impossible to take an objective, because every wave will always be pushing against you that you have to spend so much time just controlling the map and walking around it. And that leads the games to go later, which means 5v5ing is more important, and that's where World Elite fall apart.
So if we think of how WE was able to beat GE and then almost win a game of TSM, will anything about how that work against any of these top Chinese teams? Is one of them more susceptible than others?
I don't believe so, just because, and this is why I think that the best format, people were calling for like best of threes or whatever in the group stage, but I think the best format for League of Legends in its current form is a round robin. There are so many different styles, and teams are starting to really identify. Before it was kind of like, it still to a degree is kind of copying, you know, the Korean standard is here of that rotation style, and people are trying to emulate that in different ways. But teams are identifying their own unique styles, and certain teams just have stylistic better matchups.
Yeah, but you know the problem with round robin is that if you do round robin, it probably has to be best of three, because the thing is, if you do round robin and it's best of one or it's best of two, well, then you end up with scenarios quite often if you have a 4-team group, there's a lot of permutations where you'll get a tie, and as soon as you have a tie, the ideal solution is a tiebreaker, right? Well, LANs can't do that. You don't have enough time scheduled, so that means they inevitably have to come up with some inane rule for how to break ties, which tends to be something stupid like first one to like won the game in the shortest amount of time. Something like goes totally counter to the spirit of how you're supposed to play League of Legends. You know, so unfortunately, that's why teams don't do it, because that happened in the past. So I actually understand that as a constraint. You know, like that's why I personally wouldn't want ties, because actually, if you ever looked at the OGN seasons where they had just round robin group stages, they frequently had tiebreakers. In fact, there was one season where 3 of the 4 groups had to play a tiebreaker at the end. Because you also sometimes have a tiebreaker for first place, remember? You can have a tiebreaker between first and second if they beat everyone else. So the permutations, unfortunately, mean that it's going to be hard to run a LAN event if you've got 3 days to do it, you know?
No, that makes sense. That's exactly what happened to World Elite last year, actually. They had a tie, and it came down to game time played between LGD and World Elite didn't make the playoffs. And a lot of people
Which is a terrible format.
Yeah.
Because think about it, that means that some of the greatest teams of all time, so we're talking like CLG EU, the Blaze teams that were going super late game, Najin, White Shield, they are automatically at a massive disadvantage compared to teams that are actually worse than them, but just go super harm early and try to win by 20 minutes. Like that, what sort of message does that send to you, fucking the integrity of the game? The idea is all styles are supposed to be viable to win the game. Like, it's not a good metric. And in fact, here's the thing, I'll make this point now. People use that metric, I notice, fans a lot. Like, you know, when TSM beat CJ, they were like, wow, TSM beat CJ. They didn't just leave it there. They said, in 29 minutes, as though the time implied how much they dumpstered them. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, let's go in reverse then. Wasn't there some game where one of the games that TSM beat Yowie Flashwolves in, like game 2 or something, lasted like 45 minutes? Now, I don't look at that and go, right, TSM must be shit 'cause it took 45 minutes. The way the game played out, the comps that they had, and the way that Yowie defended in their base, etc., and even though they didn't get any towers or objectives, was enough to extend the game. That really had nothing to do with the quality of how good both the teams were. It's not like some sort of elimination challenge where the longer you last, the better you are against that opponent. See, that's the thing, Froskurinn, in life. It's not about how long you last. It's about the quality of what you do with how long you last.
I was deep. No, but
it's sort of a sexual innuendo, but okay.
No, but I agree. And talking to Monty, and I think he said it best: is it's all just about win conditions and power spikes. To be fair, that could be the fucking prologue to, like, you know, when you have a book and it has a quote by an author at the beginning, that would just be the quote on the beginning of Monty's biography. Like, it's all just about win conditions and power spikes, and then his actual biography of his life would be like. And then I reached my age 21. I was in the power spike of my life. I made the most of it. I went to Ireland at the time to become a bard and learn from the storytellers. You know, like, that would be the story of his life. I would read that.
Probably quite good. Yeah. And then also, what you do is, here's what you do. We would have Doa he'd do the drawing, the artwork on it, but the artwork would circle around the page, and you'd have to rotate the book to look at it properly and follow the artwork.
That is so good.
It's so meta, isn't it?
It is. It's so good.
So, okay, the last game of the week for WE, Starhorn Royal Club. Now, this is the team that's got Name back. The dream is happening for Scurry. He's back. He's ready to show the usurper Uzi Eye Kobe that he's still the best AD carry in China. He's going to cycle up. He's going to become the king by the end of the season. They're going to beat WE?
Well, first and foremost, I don't think Name is the best AD carry in China right now. I think Deft is stronger. When re-examining like Deft's lane phase, I do agree that he has a stronger lane phase, although Deft gets more resources given to him than Name. Name made some fumbles, especially on his re-entrance into competitive play in lane phase, where he gave up a couple free deaths, but his team fight is still amazing. And I think if you watch his at least his initial week games from last week, you can see that very clearly. As far as the World Elite versus Starhorn World Cup game, I'm a little bit scared for this one, in all honesty, just because Insec is not on his game right now, and Spirit has really leveled up. So, I mean, I want to say at best 1-1. I would like to see a 2-0 for Starhorn, but I'm really iffy on this. Especially if Godlike plays as well.
You mean Ackerman?
Yeah.
Okay, hipster. So
I was hoping that if I made a slide at Ackerman by using his name Godlike, the people who wouldn't know that they're the same player would be like, oh, okay, there's a Chinese player that's not very good named Godlike, as opposed to, what did she say about Ackerman?
So here's the thing, though. You said that, his lane phase isn't as good as Deft's, but Name is still really good in team fights. Mm-hmm. Isn't that the secret to being the god of AD carries in fucking China? You just, as long as you get to those team fights and you're the best in them, you're going to win more games. Because here's the thing, okay? This is another thing people who are from the West don't understand about Uzi. At Worlds, part of Uzi's power spike isn't all the shit he does in lane. That stuff's what he does in LPL. That's why people don't lane against him. The power spike he has at Worlds is that suddenly in team fights, he dodges every CC and kills everyone. That's not what he does in LPL. In LPL, you know that joke about doublelift that like all Vayne players, that they try to be doublelift, but then they just tumble into the CC and they just get trapped and killed. That's what fucking Uzi does. He actually has to be up like fucking 9 kills in lane to know that won't happen. So if Name can gracefully dance around a team fight, outputting damage, not getting hit, that's the secret to being the best.
No, I agree. If anyone has any qualms and thinks that Name is not a good ADC, if the only experience that you've ever had from Name is Worlds and then you got into LPL because of all the Koreans, watch the and of course it's GAMT, the GAMT versus Starhorn Royal Club game. And obviously their opponent isn't the highest caliber that's available to them in the LPL because it's GAMT. But Insec tries so hard to throw this game away on so many different ways, and Name just says no and just hard carries the game back to back. It's so good. Okay,
but saying that, only 5 teams had ever 2-0'd GAMT, so the god Name came in, 2-0'd him straight away in his first series. 10 times they'd drawn. See, there you go. That's the first accomplishment. Unlocked. Achievement unlocked.
I love useless statistics.
Yeah. You're the 3rd best caster in the world. So let's continue on. Right, so WE will beat Starhorn World Cup. Invictus Gaming play versus Snake. Now, IG continue to maintain a pretty decent record. They're tied for 5th at the moment. 1 win behind LGD. What do you think of this matchup here? Because on paper, they're not that far apart in the standings. How matchup-wise will this work, IG versus Snake?
It's hard because on paper they're not far in the standings, but they're so far away from each other in terms of consistency and showing like a cohesive team and idea every single time. IG is just a mixed bag, which they always have been. So I guess they're consistent in that, right? But Snake, the one thing that I will say about Snake is that they've consistently been dominating people, and they do it in the same way, majority of the same way. They're starting to mix up their compositions now. IG's ability to outplay their opponents just because of the caliber of players that they have on the team is I think, personally, my opinion, the random factor, the reason why they have those weird swings of we're amazing now and now we're not.
You keep holding out. You're still defending this fortress in which you hold the secret that Snake is shit. Now, here's the thing. Eventually, once the barbarians have knocked on the gates enough and barraged it down and you've been sieged inside and you've got no food left, eventually you have to surrender, okay? It's impossible to. Unless the barbarians just for no reason leave and Snake suddenly becomes shit. So at this point, are you now putting all your hopes on the fact that Snake will get to the playoffs and then just get instantly dumpstered? Is that like the only hope left for you? Are you really going to hold on until then?
I don't even...
Seems like it, right?
I don't even think they'll get dumpstered. This is what I will say for Snake. I think Snake's team play is really, really good. Like their team fight, how they do it, the mechanics, the players, the zoning, their cooldown, everything that's beautiful about a team fight and what makes it like really cohesive, Snake does really well, which I think is why they are a top team in the LPL. That said, their laning has problems, their vision has problems, their rotations are okay. Their draft phase definitely has problems, but LPL historically as a region has not been able to punish those issues. So I feel like Snake's weaknesses in the region that they're in are hidden. And if you took Snake and you put them in Korea, it wouldn't be a fun time for them. I guess that's my way of how I look at
you say that, but I believe the LoL Esports rankings would tell you otherwise. They'd have an awesome time in LCK.
I think they're, 4th?
Yeah. But if Team WE beat GE, then Snake would be top 2. Like, okay, there we go. That's the robot. That's the LoL Esports power rankings robot that I keep with me at all times, like R2-D2 style, to tell me stuff. So IG plays Snake. Who actually wins that? Sounds like Snake.
Yeah, I would say Snake. Like, the thing is IG's, I think, win conditions here completely are on... Rookie and Cacao ability to outplay and outperform, which against Baka is frankly very easy.
So another game IG plays this week is against OMG. Is OMG going to... I mean, listen, now they're in second. What's weird is, even though they've tied 8 series, because they've lost none, they also have a fantastic record in terms of games won and games lost. They've won 24 of their games, only lost 8. OMG will beat IG.
I think if any team can lose to anyone, it's OMG. They should. They have, again, Rookie versus Cool is interesting. Cacao versus Leveling. Zatai.
Cool is better than Rookie, right?
Huh?
Cool is better than Rookie.
I think Cool is more consistent than Rookie right now, but Rookie has like really high end ceiling, and the thing about Cool is he's consistent right now, but I'm still not seeing that amazing Cool that once was. Like sometimes he comes out, but like consistency, he's like here, and Rookie's like going like this.
What was the amazing Cool that once was?
Like if you want to go back to his Yasuo game, or in season 3, him versus Faker, or...
Okay, these are one-off games. I thought you meant like a period of time where he was really high level or something.
I mean, the mid lane talent pool in LPL has definitely gone up this season, so that's kind of my thing of throwing it back to Cool, and why I'm for me, it's hard to... I'm having like this realization of like examining Cool, because there's so much good mid talent now, and trying to reevaluate where I would put him, because obviously he has this long-standing history of being a top mid in LPL, but his previous competition, where like he was ranked at his height, because obviously then he had that period where he retired due to an eye injury and then came back, or not retired, but left competitive scene. Like his competition back then was not near to the caliber that it is now. So that's where I have issues in ranking Cool and trying to come to terms of where I would actually put him now and where I would weight him.
Who are the best mid laners in your mind? Like, who's number 1?
Of all time?
Oh, he just in right now in LPL.
In LPL right now. I know you're going to hate me for saying it, but I really think Wayless is like a huge factor. And
so Wayless is better than Pawn?
No, I was going to say Wayless and Pawn. I said Pawn on the back half. Like, Pawn's performing really well, and Wayless is doing really well. And
so Wayless is better than Cool?
Cool dumpstered Wayless 1v1, but I think Wayless does more for his team. But Cool, it's so hard, because they all do different things. Like, Cool controls the team fights for his team as far as initiating and making sure all the cooldowns are used so Uzi I can go in and do his thing. Or, like, when San and Xiang play, he just goes back to, like, normal Cool and just winning his lane and smacking his lane opponent. Wayless is so good at controlling vision for his team and creating different opportunities and wave manipulation. And then Pawn is just good at dumpstering everyone that comes up to him. Just this skirmish king right now, where he'll beat the mid laner and then he'll just walk into the enemy red jungle, find the jungler and blow him up, return to lane, start farming.
Okay. Let me ask you this then. When you say wave manipulation, so we're talking about like, are we talking literally, we're not, since you said his laning isn't that good, presumably you're not just talking about like knowing how to farm against the opponent, how to push pressure, etc., and then when to go back and all that sort of shit. Assuming we're not talking about that, usually when people say wave manipulation, they mean, for example, when you rotate to take an objective, making sure your lane's going to slow push in a certain way where you won't lose all the CS, but the opponent can't just take it away, like setting stuff up like that. So you're making then your rotations more effective.
Yep.
Now, this sounds to Westerners like this is an easy thing to do. There's one of the things about League that's actually very annoying, is this concept that once you understand a concept, you can do it and you can execute it. You can't. Like, everyone understands that you're supposed to get as much CS as you can in lane. And yet the difference in quality and even in pro level between certain players just 1v1 farming against each other can be huge. There's certain players who constantly get that 20 CS lead, you know. So in this particular respect, why do you think it is that even at the top pro level of the game, world-class players like some of the OMG players, some of them don't necessarily seem to understand these concepts, or they don't put them in action? Do you have a theory as to why this is, or why there's still a difference between teams on this level? Because you'd think everyone would see, right, well, that makes it more effective, and we practice that, then we're going to win more games, and we're going to put ourselves in better situations. But it seems like some teams, TSM in fact, some teams outright just seem to almost ignore this factor.
I think it's probably one of the most intensive things about the game, and kind of understanding just not only the mechanics of how it works, but then just analytically how it works, and pacing and timing, and there's so many different variables to it. Like, it's not just about leaving 3 creeps in a wave so you can create a slow push. It's about making sure that that's timed with the proper objective, so then you need to understand, like, what is our can we even approach, like, identify that this is the correct objective to take, and then how to prep for it, and the fact that it's not just vision and prepping for that objective, it's also the wave manipulation. And then if you want to hold a wave and creating different pressure points, like, there's just so much involved to it that it's like the topping on the cake. It's the very last, like, if you're thinking about how you're going to stack all these things up to create like the perfect objective control, it's the very last piece. Even though I think it's the most important piece, you don't really ever say. I mean, it was Najin that was really well famed for their minion wave control, and that's how they would win a lot of the games. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure, yeah, the Winions.
And even that's just one part of it. It's not always just, Winions taking the base. There are so many different ways that they can be played with. Like, this game is, I should just make a video. This game is all about creeps.
Yeah, that would be a good title for it. That would be a good title for the video, right?
Yep.
This game is all about creeps. That's also the sort of thing that, like, Monty writes on a fucking blackboard when he's, like, coaching CLG. Like, it's not about kills. It's about creeps and towers. This game is about creeps and towers. Anyway, so OMG play against King this week. Now, we've been waiting all this time for King to get these upsets to impress us. In the meantime, Froskurinn, they've lost 7 of the series they've played. Has King... Are they going to circle back a little bit? Are they going to start to have a rise there? Can they beat OMG?
No. I think King is dead. They replaced the support staff. They had a bit of a high last week, but they faced easy teams. Their champion pool and their pick ban strategy is just not working for them. Their players aren't showing up on important picks. There's just so much going wrong with King right now. That even though that they're still decent at team fighting, it can't compensate for it.
Is that a team where if things go badly, they'll do that stuff that they do where they just replace half the roster, like what WE did, just replace half the roster, kick people out? Are there like salvageable players who'll definitely remain in this team and they'll go forwards?
Yeah, I think so. I think Lei is good, the support player. Sky is really hit or miss for me. He used to have like this great reputation, but I don't know what's been going on with him. Assassin, I think everyone can agree that their mid laner are strong. MLXG is mediocre in the context of just the amazing jungle talent that is right now in the region, which is kind of unfortunate because I don't think he's that awful. So I definitely think that, Assassin and the bot lane are good, solid pieces. Sky and MLXG I'm still kind of on the fence about.
Vici Gaming play Gamti. Now, where's Vici at the moment, do you think?
Probably in a really awful place, actually. They're having some internal drama going on, and I think it's very apparent in their play.
And is that something where it's actually, like, is there time for all that to just get fixed and ironed out and it won't be an issue anymore?
You would think, especially, to be frank, it's with Mata. There's been rumors going around that Mata's performance and attitude, or his performance is being affected by his attitude, and that he's just very frustrated. I, again, can't confirm 100% on this, but I think it is very apparent, and especially the Demacia Cup recently. But it's weird, too, because he had these same rumors about him and Samsung White, like between Imp and Mata. It was rumored that there was like, they didn't necessarily love each other, but it was just this professional relationship that you're my AD carry, I'm your support, we're going to get shit done, and we're going to do it to the best of our ability. And so, to me, Mata has this, obviously his team is very different from Samsung White. He's working with a completely different caliber of players, but he already has proven that I have this mindset that, this is my job, and at the end of the day, I'm going to get shit done. But now that seems to be crumbling or falling apart.
When you talk about the Koreans in Chinese League, how much of it is, like, obviously they're in a different culture and some of them have very little language ability to speak to their teammates directly. That's going to affect team play. But how much do you think is also the fact that in Chinese League in general, it looks like there's not as much of an emphasis directly on team play and like putting certain players together who'd match together, or direct communication. It seems like even some of the teams play it individualistically, and maybe it's more of like they emphasize like, let's play as a team, let's win, all that. But really in the game, a lot of them just tend to make individual decisions and you hope that works out,
No, I think that's actually a really accurate way to look at it. And I think that's part of the reason why EDG is so above and beyond pretty much every single team, because I feel like they're not the only team that do this in LPL, but they're the clearest one where they don't just take the best player. Like if you think about OMG, take like the best, all the best from every single position, put them on one team, this will be amazing. EDG is thinking about the synergy. When they picked Koro, they picked him because he had worked with Clearlove, so they wanted the added synergy there. It was all important about like team cohesion and the power of friendship and all of those things. And I think Aaron, their coach, has spoken on this many times in interviews. Like what does he call it? The steps of, I'm trying to think of, he has like this belief, or like the steps of a team reaching their full potential, and teamwork and synergy is like core to his belief.
See, that's where CLG went wrong, because they were always trying to reach their potential, but their worst things was always teamwork and synergy. They could never get those two down, so they were trying to build that pyramid, but they didn't have the base places in there, you know.
So to me, I was a big Moscow 5 fan, and I mean, Diamond, of course, was amazing, and Alex Ich was amazing, but the rest of the players, I wouldn't have said that they were the best in the world at their positions. And to me, what made them so much fun to watch and what made them so amazing was that synergy. Like, it was just unreal how well they understood what they were all doing for each other. They caught a bunch of teams off guard. And so whenever I talk about, like, the beautiful, like, the power of synergy, I always think about Moscow 5.
That's also something that unfortunately gets a bit confused, I think, when people describe teams, is that there's a big difference between that type of synergy, which is natural, and Cloud9's another great example of it, obviously, where from day one almost that lineup played together, they were playing in this fashion where they naturally played off each other very well. It seemed like they had intuitive understanding of what their teammate would do now, and that fit what they were going to do. You know, if you listen to the comms, you wouldn't find... There wouldn't be a secret if you listen to their comms where you'd find out that they had some secret code and they were saying some special trigger word. No, they just almost magically play off each other. The natural chemistry is there. So unfortunately, I always think you should divide up synergy into two types. There's natural synergy, which you can only tell once you get to play each other, like where that is. You fairly quickly will get a good gauge on how that's going to be. Meanwhile, there's like artificially created synergy, okay, where you play with someone and you decide, right, listen, right now we don't fit together that well, but let's do OQ. Let's have a system of codes, okay, like I'll tell you when I want you to go in this particular fashion, or we'll have like a system where we know when we're going to play more passively. What you're really doing there is artificially trying to get close to the other thing. Usually I don't know it's possible to get close to it, because really the perfect world is where you don't have to say anything and you can both do exactly what you should do at that moment, you know. There'll always be a little bit of a lag if there's communication involved, and then like misinterpreting and all that stuff. So in a weird way, everyone else who's trying to artificially build it, which you have to do unless you get the magical lineup, in a way is always playing catch up to the people who have the special one. But also the downside of having the special communication like that is there's not really that much further you can go once you've got it. So the examples we gave there, Moscow 5, Cloud9, they both eventually have gotten stuck in ruts where they can't seem to improve as a team. They definitely can't improve that aspect, and to remove a player possibly degrades that aspect, and you're really gambling that you'll ever get that synergy back, you know. So it's one of the interesting balances when you have a special team, I think.
No, I completely agree, and I think the obvious examples, like the ones you were saying, is Cloud9 versus Moscow 5. The fact that Hai had to be manufactured, in a sense, to cover for his weaknesses and to learn how to play with Meteos.
So VG plays against Snake. Who was the first team I said they played against?
Snake or Vici?
Who did VG play this week?
Gamty, Snake.
Okay,
and
so they're going to beat Gamty at least.
Yeah, hold on, they'll split 1-1.
Okay. Well, what about when they play Snake? Can VG... Do they have a decent matchup to beat Snake?
I actually really like the stylistic matchup of Vici Gaming versus Snake, but only, like, it's so weird because you never know. They're like Invictus Gaming. Like, you know that somewhere in there's a good team that can do things, but it's just a matter of if that team's going to show up, which, again, then makes them kind of a bad team because they don't have the consistency to put up the results. The weakest part about Vici is always going to be A, the internal drama with Mata and how Mata's going to fit in, if he's going to be able to lead the team, and B, their mid laner Hatong, who frankly is just a weak mechanical champion pool player. He's just kind of a glaring issue. Carry, their top laner, I think has the solid bones to work with, but he's very green because he's a rookie, so there's also that element. Okay,
so let's pretend for a second that I'm really naive when I ask this question. If Hatong is a weak mid laner mechanically, and he's just not very good in general, why is Team WE taking in Shie out of nowhere last minute and just putting him into their lineup, but a team like Vici is just like, just stick with that guy, don't worry about it? Yeah.
Obviously,
What am I missing?
teams are working with different salaries and different rosters and different pools of talent that they can scout for. So in World Elite's case, this is a massive organization, probably the largest in China, at least just overreaching, but I'm trying to think about like the easiest way to describe it. Like I've talked at length how Energy Pacemaker, like there's their roster of 5, but then they have a pool that they can pick from of like 40 players. And World Elites is even larger because you have to think Masters 3, World Elite are kind of intertwined still, despite.
Okay, so what's the delay on picking a new mid laner then? If there's, here's the thing about Korea that was always very harsh but very good, is that in general, if you were like a rookie and you came in and you weren't good, they just got you the fuck out of there. Now listen, some mega stars who used to be gods, they might get a bit more leeway. They might get a few more seasons, or they might get to stay for star power. But if you were an unknown player and you weren't good when you first came in, they just got you out there. They got another guy. They'd rather gamble on a new guy and see if he's good, you know. So why is China slower on that respect?
Contracts are a big issue. You have to think that anytime you're breaking one of the LSPL or LPL contracts, I've heard numbers as big as $125,000 just to break the contract if they're signed to another team, which so many of these teams have players signed to them even if they're not on the fronting roster due to the streaming contracts. So even affording these players or finding players that are free agents is actually very difficult. And I find it no surprise that they were able, like World Elite were able to pull Xie in this example when Xie was the former mid laner of World Elite Academy. I obviously don't have the background like he was contracted to that organization the entire time, but they obviously already had him in their Rolodex. Thank you. I said Exodius as well. How did I say it? Because I was a Yu-Gi-Oh player.
You always pronounce things interestingly. You seem Froskurinn.
I think the word is wrong.
You seem like someone who learned English just by reading it, and so you never heard anyone say the words out loud. So this is like the first time you say it, but usually I don't correct you. I just let that go by. Like I'll pretend I didn't hear that.
Please,
okay, keep going.
I didn't have a lot of people to talk to as a kid.
It's okay. It's okay. You're learning. So, in terms, I've got a question like this, okay? So, in the same way that you get to enjoy IEM, where Team WE had this great overperformance, but we all know if they played like 5 more IEMs over the next week each, like next week there's an IEM, a week after that there's an IEM, in general, the lower level LPL teams would probably do quite poorly. So you'd have to come back down to reality. You could enjoy it for the moment, but you'd be forced to come back to reality. Is there a worry for you at all that if the Chinese bubble bursts or proves to have gotten too burdensome in terms of how much money they're putting up there and how much they're paying for these Korean players, that after this LPL season, some of the Koreans go back home and it reduces the talent level again, and then Korea gets stronger, and all these positive things that were happening in China and LPL get a little bit reduced or maybe even go down and much more? Is that a concern for you at all?
For the mid-tier teams, the kind of the mid-tier strength of LPL, definitely. I think on the higher end, EDG, some of the LGD members, I think we're actually safe. Like, I think if the bubble did pop, I think Pawn and Deft would still be in Shang. Deft is hard because he's so young. No, I'm going to say that I would think that Pawn and Deft would stay just because of the success to their team and that they're, very clearly on the path and the trajectory to make Worlds. I think that matters to a lot of these Korean players. Some Korean players it doesn't matter to. Some you can point and say, okay, he's here because he's getting paid. But for people like, unfortunately, Spirit really cares. And I think Pawn and Deft show that they really care.
Here's another question. Okay, so if we're talking about EDG, at least at the moment, it's working out great having those Koreans. Same for LGD. They look like in better teams as a result of having the Koreans. But some of these teams, you know what? As bizarre as it sounds, Vici doesn't always look like it works having the Koreans. M3 definitely sometimes doesn't. Like if M3, in a world without those Koreans, if M3 brought in someone like Xie, they'd probably have a better upside going forwards, wouldn't they?
Yeah, definitely at the beginning. I think that we are starting to see the true hybrid rosters kind of figure each other out, though, and I think that testaments to the fact that the region is splitting a lot of 1-1s because we do have a lot of superstar talent that is scattered over various stages of the LPL, and it's starting to be figured out and worked a little bit better. M3 in particular is kind of the example to this. Dade is stepping back up, or I don't know if he's giving a shit or what it is, or just finding more consistency, if the coaching staff is working with him better. He's having better performance, and M3 is playing better with him. Yeah.
So VG will lose to Snake. Snake will defeat them. It's Snake. Come on.
Right, I was talking about the stylistic matchup between Vici and Snake. So Snake is really good at their team play, which is why they're so potent and powerful. They have been showing a lot of creative compositions or newer compositions, so they're not just that one-trick pony anymore. At least they've showed some depth to their champion pool. The thing about Vici is when Vici is on their game, their rotations and their vision control are so perfect. And if you have good vision control against Beast, it's like a domino effect. If you can control Beast and control Flandre, which means if Flandre never gets going, then their team fights aren't as potent as they usually are, because it's about his teleport play with the bottom lane. It's like all of these factors, like a spider web, and it all weaves together perfectly. So I think that Vici Gaming have the tools to be an answer to Snake, but the issue is that they never use those tools the same time or as well the same time every time.
So that sounded like Vici's gonna lose to Snake.
Yeah, I think that Snake's gonna win, but I would love to see Vici playing like their best game, which we've seen in a couple of their sets, not just in most recent weeks, but since the very beginning. You keep seeing like these little spikes of their performance. Like you have Mata and Dandy. If Mata and Dandy are on their game and Hotong's not feeding that game, Vasily gets one of the champions that he performs on, and Carry plays Rumble, there's a very real upset there, or at least a good game between Vici and Snake.
Every team in every league, there's always at least one opponent that they can match up well with. This is just a fact about the way matchups work. If Snake plays Energy Pacemaker, is Snake the team that Energy Pacemaker could at least match up in some sense with?
No.
Is there a team that Energy Pacemaker can match up in some sense with? Aside from EDG or whoever
Energy
it was.
Pacemaker plays a really good early game. Drizzle is a Lee Sin main. He makes early ganks. Kane stands in the back.
Was it Energy Pacemaker who beat EDG? Who was their one loss against? They had one loss against someone. Snake. Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Energy Pacemaker, their problem is they can't close out. They rely on snowballs. They rely on, I don't want to call it cheese, but they had a good, Raphael has had a better performance recently. I don't think Energy Pacemaker like truly matches up well with anyone. I think that their problem is that they're frankly just outclassed in pretty much every single position, and then they're also strategically a very weak team.
Here's the problem then for Froskurinn. If Team WE now, okay, they're not going to storm LPL, but they now look like they have a much better roster. So they should be able to get some wins. So if they stop being the worst team in LPL, and Sahon Royal Club have Name now, they're going to be climbing. That puts us in a scenario where isn't the bottom of LPL like Energy Pacemaker, Gamti, King? King is now like third from bottom. Can that really be the world we're going to live in?
Unfortunately, it is. I think as Starhorn obviously moves up, King's just going to move further down. I think then the next person on the chopping block, I would have said it was Masters 3. I'm still really iffy on Masters 3 if they're actually showing up or if this is just a high that's going to come back down. But I would say, like, depending on consistency, Masters 3 and Vici would then kind of be the next two to slip down.
So the last team we're going to talk about this week has 3 games. It's EDG, the people who are leading the league. They've won 25 out of 30 games, which is obviously a very impressive win rate. First game is the classic. This should be the one everyone should be hyping for Froskurinn, but no one's hyping it. EDG is going to play against Name.
Yep.
That's the match right there. That's the one you want to see, right? Deft versus Name.
And what's really cool about EDG is that they scrim Starhorn Royal Club a lot. So these teams, especially with like Name as a piece there, do have history with each other in this current iteration, this current form.
So how do you think that matchup's going to work? I mean, on paper, you're supposed to say...
Smash
No
Starhorn Royal Club.
chance whatsoever.
Starhorn, though, they've always been known for upsets, but typically it's in like this playoff position. I don't know if they're going to play Kola, if they're going to play Ackerman. I think Kola is the far better top laner right now than Ackerman. Ackerman himself has said that Kola is the better top laner. The reason why Kola is not playing is because Kola benched himself. He said, he doesn't want to play. Same reason why Ninja's not playing. Ninja actually benched himself.
See, now you're going to have to explain this to me, because no Western player has ever benched himself.
So in the context of World Elite, Yujie and Ninja are on this team. This team's losing every single week, and Yujie's having like a mental breakdown. He's like, can I even play this game anymore? Is it me? Am I the problem here? Please just like bench me. And Ninja's
And
like,
the answer is yes.
Please take me out. Just put in Shie, put in the other guy I've done. So they actually asked for it.
Well, maybe it was one of those things, like, when, I mean, someone listen, they're just feeling a bit down and they need some attention. You know, so as kind of a cry for help, they say like, listen, like, okay, I quit. Like, I can't do this job anymore. And all they want is they want to go into the rec room and have a cup of coffee and the boss to come in and go, listen, I think's all right. Like, are you a bit stressed out? Listen, take a day off, like recover, come back. Maybe that's what he thought he was going to do. But he was like, listen, I quit. I can't play. I'm going to bench myself. And they were like, deal. Awesome. Right. Listen, you can go home. Like, we'll get this other guy in. Like, it was great playing with you. Like, we enjoyed your time. He's like, whoa, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, sorry, you're done. It's out. It's over. I'm glad you said it first. So, yeah, it's over for him.
I don't think so. I know that Ninja was rumors of talking about retirement possibly, but he wanted to retire under the World Elite Organization banner. We'll see how it all plays. Oh, there's all these streaming contracts, and Ninja is actually really popular in China. They call him Rabbit. So even if he did retire right now when the streaming contracts are so high, he'd make quite a bit of money.
So if EDG, well, they're obviously by far the best Chinese team. They have every quality almost. They're the best in, right? They're best players in some sense, best teamwork, best strategy, but maybe even the best individual player at the moment, deft. So they have all these great qualities going for them. But if you ever noticed the way I think about the game, I always believe in the power of individuals. I do think that amazing individuals can overcome not necessarily the best team, but they can at least like battle against them. Like they can hold their own and battle in that sense. Is Name ready to like at least show us some amazing fight in this series?
I would hope so. The problem is that his team, like if you think about Name's big strong points and where I would love to see, like, because when you think about Def versus Name, that's not a 1v1 lane matchup, or at least historically it shouldn't have been. Not that they can't perform the lane, just because it's not what they're known for. It's all about the team fighting, okay? So your team is a major factor of that. And unfortunately, Starhorn Royal Club in this iteration is still, you can tell that there's some problems. There's some growing pains that need to be worked out. And so that's like the big problem. And then you're facing EDG, who's not only the best team in China, but head and shoulders the best team in China. They are so far above everyone right now. And so I kind of feel like it's just going to be, Name's not even going to get the chance to shine or to have that toe-to-toe with Def, where you have these amazing team fights, and it's where the AD carry's positioning, and oh, look what Def's doing, look what Name's doing, look at how they're countering it, just because Name doesn't have that frontline synergy worked out for them yet.
If EDG is going to beat Starhorn Royal Club, well then what about the games against M3 and GAMT? Does anyone have a chance to beat EDG? Are we going to at least get a game off them this week?
Unless they're just experimenting and they're trying new picks and they just get caught off guard, very doubtful. Dade
dumpsters pawn. What happens then? Would that even be enough to win the game, do you think?
No, there's too many threats. And Pawn, the thing is the EDG doesn't even put resources in a Pawn. Pawn's just winning on his own. Like, they literally just leave him to his own devices, and he's just like, what up? 1v1. Jungler, 1v2. Clearlove spends all of his time bottom to just make sure that Deft wins lane and Deft gets huge.
So, literally, EDG is just going to retain the king status at the top of the league.
Yeah. I don't think that there's any team that... If EDG is playing seriously and they're playing to win, which they've actually played a ton of troll games where they're just messing with picks and they still just dominate their opponents. You had to think this last week, and we just talked about, 20-minute games, the fact that a team gets closed out so quickly doesn't prove to how good the team is, but they won in 20 minutes with a Kog'Maw. Like, they had a late game power spike team, but they were able to rotate so quickly and efficiently and take down all of these towers that they took this Kog'Maw, which is naturally a late game champion, and they made him a late game champion at 20 minutes just because of how much gold they were getting as quickly as possible, and then just executed perfectly to just close it out. LGD were just suffering, and this isn't a bottom tier LPL team. Like, this is effectively GE just punching Cloud9 in the face, but EDG versus LGD.
It's time for a test of your analytical skills. So an important part of coming up with theories, and the idea of a theory, for people who don't know this, in the West, people misunderstand the word theory. The word theory doesn't just mean an idea. It means an idea backed up by some basis of evidence, and then you can draw conclusions from it. So it's different from a hypothesis, which is just an idea. Like, what if this was to happen? Would this go like this? Okay. Mm-hmm. So if you have a theory, and your theory, based on LPL results, is that EDG is the best team right now in the world and LPL, then we have to try and make some predictions from this. But the concept of the predictions is they don't have to be right, but they have to in some way fit into what your theory is as to why it's the best team. And then when we find out the outcome later on, we'll be able to see if there's anything to your reasoning, okay? So as it stands right now, where GE Tigers just lost to Team WE in that semi-final, if at the MSI or in 6 months from now, EDG plays a best of 5 against GE, what would EDG do and what strengths would they have that would mean they would beat GE in the best of 5?
I think the mid laner for GE, his name's Kuro.
Yep.
I think he has a very small champion pool right now. I think a big strength of Pawn and of EDG across the board is that their champion pools are massive. So as the meta shifts, they have more available options to them. I think that their team play and the fact that they've shown different styles, although, see, this is hard because I don't know GE like how I know EDG. So I can really only speak to what I've seen at IM and in EDG strengths.
So from the EDG side then, yeah? So
EDG, massive champion pool, a variety of styles. They have the oppressive, dominating team fight potential. They have the oppressive, dominating skirmish early game potential, and they can swap back and forth between them. And they have different picks that can completely change how they react around each other as a team. They've got triple threat carries. Koro has gone off. Pawn always goes off. Deft, obviously, is the big AD carry star right there.
Right, settle the fuck down. Are you now calling Koro like a carry threat?
Yeah, Koro has proven in the LPL that he is now a carry threat. Before, Koro had an issue where he would never win lane. He was that utility bruiser, tank zone kind of guy, and he's really turned into a different animal in this split. I think the most improved player in LPL from last split or from last season to this season has been Koro. It's 100%. This is a new animal. Like you. So
he's turned from the Chinese Dyrus, whose job was just don't die, try and be useful even when you die, zone, just go into the fights. Now he's carrying outright.
He has, yeah. On his NAR games, there are several, even in Best of Fives, what tournament happened? In the G League tournament alone, like that far back, you could see Koro hard carries those series.
Okay, but he's going to beat Smeb.
I don't know Smeb as well.
Okay.
I hear that Smeb's really good.
And what about
I'm
AD
not saying
carry
that,
though?
like Koro would dumpster someone in lane, like go going, but he's not going to lose lane. And he's proven that he has now the two different styles. That he can play the carry and he can play the tank.
And you have Deft as the best AD carry in the world.
Best AD carry in China.
In the world?
Prey didn't look too hot at IM when I
Then
saw
in the world, like you're agreeing with me now. In the world.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say.
Okay, is Deft the best player in the world? Is he better than Faker? Do you think?
No.
Why not?
What makes Faker amazing? His intelligence, his mechanics, his champion pool, his performance, his consistency, his position. I think a big part of what makes Faker amazing is the fact that he is a mid laner. I don't think if he was... See, the thing is you can get this weird debate that if Faker wasn't a mid laner, but he was still, like Faker level and everything, but you put him in a different position, you might not see the Faker quality just because mid has so much impact
you probably
in
wouldn't.
the game.
That's the thing. This is a historical fact about League of Legends. There will always be a bias towards mid laners for like a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a position where if you're aggressive as a mid laner, you can play burst champions at 0 to 1, like 100 to 0 people, which you can't do that as an AD carry. Like think about some of the best AD carries of all time that play shit like Vayne. Well, even when you're full build, it still takes like 3 or 4 auto attacks to kill someone with Vayne. Like you're not gonna instantly kill 4 or 5 people, Likewise, another reason why mid's always been like that in terms of the greatness of the players and their legacies is because in general, you don't get meta shifts at mid that totally fuck your entire champion pool so you have nothing you can play. Like even in the era when everyone was playing Ziggs and all those farming champions, you could still, in theory, play some stuff that could 1v1 or could still be aggressive. There's never been anything equivalent to when the top lane went to the super tank meta or when AD carry was vastly reduced in terms of the damage they could do and even everyone else was tanky on the map. There's never been anything as extreme as that could take even the best player at that position and make him so much less effective, So by default, you're right. If you wanted to be one of the most successful players and one of the best players, mid lane is the best position to play, actually.
And the other thing is they're so independent of meta changes that go on around them. Think of how many AD carries have been rendered useless. It's not just me saying this, but for support, if you see my footnote here, Alex Itch, when I talked to him on the Worlds preview show that you had, and I covered for you for a little bit, was he said that Kog'Maw couldn't be played during Worlds because the mid picks at the time were so strong that just denied that champion's viability. Like, when was the last time that you heard, like, this mid laner can't be picked because a top champion or an AD carry? Like, that never happens.
Well, it's the same reason why you can't play certain things like Vayne now. Because you're never going to get a chance to do any of that sidestepping and going around start stepping on everyone because of all the fucking champions that people play. Like fucking Sion's going to be all over your face 24/7. You're not going to get away from that. Like, you can't kite that.
Yep.
So yeah, that's true. That's actually, in fact, that's what's funny. That's how Kog'Maw came back into the meta in League of Legends. Was when all the super tanks were coming around. That's one of the few things that could shred them. It's like, that's the famous thing about Kog'Maw, is that it shreds tanks, you know. So that's why it started to gradually come back into the meta, was as a response to all the uber super tanks, you know. So other stuff had to go out of the meta.
I think so. Another big issue though was also the mid lane changing to like the AP items and everything getting messed up and changing back.
Okay.
Forcing the decline of the assassins.
Okay, I've got a different question then. Because in Counter-Strike, when we have a similar discussion where we always talk about who's the best player in the world, I always think there's two categories. I created this years ago, because the problem in Counter-Strike 1.6, a game that had been around for 10 odd years, there was literally, we had like a guy who was like our faker, okay, a guy called Neo, and he was just the best. Like, he was incredible in every area, and he just never got bad, you know. He might have like a month where he played okay, but then a month later he'd be back to being the absolute best you could ever imagine, you know. So the problem was, it became boring to have the conversation who's the best player, because no one was ever really going to overtake this guy. He was always going to be the best again. So a way to have the discussion still was I created a separate category, most efficient player in the world. And the concept there wasn't just efficient in terms of their own individual game. I meant efficient as in they look like the best because within their team, what they do for their team makes them the most effective. Okay, effective is the better way to say it. The most effective player in the world. So in that sense, could we say Deft is the most effective player in League of Legends right now? Because he's one of the best, and in terms of his team, he's obviously absolutely incredible, and they're winning everything, and he's a primary part, right?
Well, a cool thing about Deft, too, if you apply that definition to him, is because historically he wouldn't win lane phase, and so he would take less gold than the enemy AD carry into these big, massive team fights, but he was so much more at maximizing his efficiency with the gold deficit that he had, and doing just so much more for his team. So he pretty much fits that description to a T, and what made him potent and what made him powerful. So I think that there's a fair argument there.
Has watching the IEM tournament, here's a dangerous question for you. Has watching the IEM tournament where Xie did really well against Bjergsen in game 1, has watching that tournament made you think anything about Western mids compared to Chinese mids? If this is just some solo queue guy who could do that.
Bjergsen is on a completely different caliber of pretty much any other, at least North American mid. I don't look too closely at the European mids, but I think that Bjergsen is head and shoulders above pretty much any other NA mid. So like the thing about China, and I've said this before, and this gets me into trouble, their player base is so massive. You have so many more, not elite players, but just like there's more numbers to try to hit that chance of finding an elite, mechanically skilled player. I've talked to, when I had Chaox and Inori and Yuno and all those players, the North American players in, like their top challenger players in Chinese solo queue, they said it was harder.
Well, here's the thing people don't understand from the West. It's that that's not even an opinion. It's not even a debatable opinion that China, and by the way Korea, have way more like players who would be average or good pros than the West.
It's already been proven.
Never mind the god players.
The Chinese and Korean players that
But here's the
their
thing.
way into the Western scene.
In the West, almost everyone who's good at least tries to get to a challenger team, right? They try and play challenger, and then if they get a chance, maybe they get into LCS. And yes, not every great player is an LCS. Sometimes the opportunities that, like, maybe they're from the wrong country, or they don't have the right contacts, or they wouldn't have the team doesn't want to take a chance on them. Sometimes people slip through the cracks. But in general, we see all the talent does rise through LCS. They get their chances, they get onto a team, they get in a challenger, they get to show us something. The limiting factor in Korea and China isn't the players. We're getting nearly all the good players. We're squeezing the lemon almost entirely dry in the West. In China and Korea, it's the fact that there's not even spaces on these teams for these players.
There's so many good players.
Korea, there's only 8 fucking teams. So if you're not one of those 8, or you're not good enough to be a starter, You're not even going to ever get a sniff at a pro career. That would be a massive chance for them to let you on. And Korea has no challenger scene. It does. It actually has some challenger tournaments going on, but no one watches them. I don't even know the rosters. You know what I mean? It's totally unknown. So actually, if there were even more leagues and more teams, as much as people in the West wouldn't want to hear this, there would be so many teams that would be with players at the level of people like Gravity and these sorts of Western teams, Copenhagen Wolves. There would be players as good or better in like 15th, 20th best Chinese, Korean teams. That's just a fact. It actually helps the West in a weird way that those scenes are a little more limited in that sense.
No, I mean, I agree. Think about the talent that alone is sitting on China's bench. Like the insane caliber. Save is a bench player right now.
Dude, you could make a world championship contender out of benched players in both Korea and China right now. You really could, and it would compete for the world's title.
How sad is that?
It's terrible. Okay, so let's do the games for the week then. What is the Drexin Filthy Casual Killfest game?
Looking at these games. Starhorn Royal Club versus WE. Hands down. Easy.
Because WE just goes ham?
Yeah, because they're just gonna... It's gonna be a kill fest. It's got Insec in the game. It's got Xie in the game. It's gonna be awesome.
What is the Monte Cristo boring rotations grind it out game?
EDG versus... I would actually say EDG versus M3.
Isn't M3's whole style to go fucking berserk in the mid game?
They how they've been using Dade is, again, they are doing this weird trying to out-rotate people and try to set up better team fights. And Candy's performing well. Okay. It depends on the M3 that shows up. Obviously, M3, because they're like that mid-tier, bottom-tier LPL team, they can either decide to just like shit the bed or, have a brain. And when they have a brain, they're actually really entertaining.
So now Candy Panda isn't even the best AD carry called Candy.
Candy is really good. He's probably the best Callista player in LPL. And
you're a fucking hater, dude. You're fucking hating on Crystal all the time, and now you love this Candy guy. Who's better, Candy or Crystal, Froskurinn?
Crystal's better. Candy, though, is a
fucking hater.
Really good Callista player. Just go watch his Callista games.
Oh, he's good on one champion, is he? Oh, well then you must fucking love Crystal. He's good on like 3 champions.
Crystal is better. Hey, he's got 4.
Did Crystal like date you for the summer and then break your heart, and then no one knows about it, but you'll never get over it? I think you've got some secret bias against that. I don't know what it is, but we're going to get to the bottom of it as Snake continue to dominate and move up through the LPL rankings.
I know, they're going to wreck in playoffs. They're going to finish second LPL, and it's going to be sitting here like, why?
So, okay. What is the Froskurinn pick of the week, though?
I am really excited. I'm really excited for Starhorn Royal Club versus CDG. Name is my favorite player. I'm now like a full Starhorn Royal Club supporter just because they have Name. I love watching EDG, so this is like 2 of my favorite teams.
That's the ultimate storyline as well. Come on, he's not only playing his old team, but he's joined the team that Uzi left, and all that shit. The team that beat them at fucking Worlds. The whole thing's awesome. The storyline.
There's a great interview where they talk to Clearlove, Zero, and Name, and it's kind of like on Name's return, and they make comments. What does Zero say? He says, now that we have a good AD carry, we'll be able to do this and this. And Clearlove's like, yeah, their AD carry was so limiting before, and you know that they're talking about Wei and HYY, or at least you assume that they're talking about the subs.
Yeah.
But I just imagine that Zero saying this, and just across the stage, he's staring at Uzi, just like full eye contact.
Okay. I think that's pretty much it. For anyone who watches this episode now, because I'm going to release it tonight, Froskurinn will be on Summoning Insight, which should be streamed later tonight. So go on there and see. Well, if you watch this show, you don't mind. But people who potentially might get upset, get a blank picket sign and a Sharpie pen and just take notes. Just wait until you see something you don't like, and then start posting about it on Twitter. You guys know the drill. I don't have to tell you guys. She also, at the beginning of the show, she stands up on her webcam and reveals quite a shocking surprise. See the way I teased that there? They don't know what it could mean now.
They're like...
So, yeah. A shocking surprise. She shocks all of us. Yep. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Subscribe, all that good shit. Goodbye, everyone.